Well, hello. Welcome this evening to another beautiful chapter. We're going to mix things up a bit and read Harry Potter tonight. Do you like Harry Potter? Actually, I despise Harry Potter. I'd rather read The Giver. Let's go. Chapter 6. Lily, please hold still, Mother said again. Lily, standing in front of her, fidgeted impatiently. I can tie them myself, she complained. I always have. I know that, Mother replied, straightening the hair ribbons on the little girl's braids. But I also know that they constantly come loose. More often than not, they're dangling down by your back by afternoon. Today, at least, we want them to be tied to stay neatly tied. But I don't like hair ribbons. I'm glad I only have to wear them one more year, Lily said irritably. Next year, I get my bicycle too, she added more cheerfully. There are good things each year, Jonas reminded her. This year, you get to start your volunteer hours. And remember last year when you became a 7, you were so happy to get your front button jacket? The little girl nodded and looked down at herself as the jacket with its row of large buttons that designated her as a 7. 4s, 5s, and 6s all wore jackets that fastened down the back so that they would have to help each other dress and learn independence. The front button jacket was the first sign of independence, the first very visible symbol of growing up. The bicycle at 9 would be the powerful emblem of moving gradually in and out of the community, away from the protective family unit. Lily grinned and wiggled away from her mother. And this year, you get your assignment, she said to Jonas in an excited voice. I hope you get pilot, and then you can take me flying. Oh, sure I will, said Jonas. And I'll get a special little parachute that fits just for you. And I'll take you up to maybe 20,000 feet. Open the door and Jonas, Mother warned. I was only joking, Jonas groaned. I don't want pilot anyway. If I get pilot, I would put it on to appeal. Oh, come on, Mother said. She gave Lily's ribbons a final tug. Jonas, are you ready? Did you take your pill? I want you to get a good seat in the auditorium. She prodded Lily toward the front door, and Jonas followed. It was a short ride to the auditorium, Lily waving to her friends from her seat in the back of her mother's bicycle. Jonas stowed his bicycle beside Mother's and made his way through the throng to find his group. The entire community attended the ceremony each year. For the parents, it meant 2 days' holiday from work. They sat together in the huge hall. Children sat with their groups until they went, one by one, up to the stage. Father, though, would not join Mother in the audience right away. For the earliest ceremony, the naming, the nurturers brought out the new children to the stage. Jonas, from his place in the balcony with the 11s, searched the auditorium for a glimpse of Father. It wasn't at all hard to spot the nurturer section at the front. Coming from it were the wails and howls of the new children who sat squirming on the nurturer's laps. At every other public ceremony, the audience was silent and attentive. But once a year, they all smiled indulgently at the commotion from the little ones waiting to receive their names and families. Jonas finally caught his father's eye and waved. Father grinned and waved back. Then he held up the hand of the new child in his lap, making it wave too. It wasn't Gabriel. Gabe was back at the nurturing center today, being cared for by the night crew. He had been given an unusual and special reprieve from the committee and granted an additional year of nurturing before his naming and placement. Father had gone before the committee with the plea on behalf of Gabriel, who had not yet gained weight appropriate to the days of his life, nor begun to sleep soundly enough at night to be placed with his family unit. Normally, such a new child would be labeled inadequate and released from the community. Instead, as a result of Father's plea, Gabriel had been labeled uncertain and given the additional year. He would continue to be nurtured at the center and would spend his nights with Jonas's family unit. Each family member, including Lily, had been required to sign a pledge that they would not become attached to this little temporary guest, and that they would relinquish him without protest or appeal when he was assigned to his own family unit at next year's ceremony. At least, Jonas thought, after Gabriel was placed next year, they would still see him often and he would be a part of the community. If he were released, they would not see him again. Ever. Those who were released, even as new children, were sent to elsewhere and never returned to the community. Father had not had to release a single new child this year, so Gabriel would have represented a real failure and sadness. Even Jonas, though he didn't hover over the little one the way Lily and his father did, was glad that Gabe had not been released. The first ceremony began right on time, and Jonas watched as one after another each new child was given a name and handed by the nurturers to its new family unit. For some, it was the first child, but many came to the stage accompanied by another child, beaming with pride to receive a little brother or sister, the way Jonas had when he was about to be 5. Asher poked Jonas's arm. "Remember when we got Philippia?" he asked in a loud whisper. Jonas nodded. It had only been last year. Asher's parents had waited quite a long time before applying for a second child. Maybe, Jonas suspected, they had been so exhausted by Asher's lively foolishness that they needed a little more time. 2 of their group, Fiona and another female named Thea, were missing temporarily, waiting for their parents to receive new children. But it was rare that there was such an age gap between children in a family unit. When her family ceremony was completed, Fiona took the seat that had been saved in her row ahead of Asher and Jonas. She turned and whispered to them, "He's cute, but I don't like his name very much." She had made a face and giggled. Fiona's new brother had been named Bruno. It wasn't a great name, Jonas thought, like Gabriel, for example, but it was okay. The audience applause, which was enthusiastic at each naming, rose in an exuberant swell when one parental pair, glowing with pride, took a male new child and heard him named Caleb. This new Caleb was a replacement child. The couple had lost their first Caleb, a cheerful little 4. Loss of a child was very, very rare. The community was extraordinarily safe, each citizen watchful and protective of all children. But somehow the first little Caleb had wandered away unnoticed and had fallen into the river. The entire community had performed the ceremony of loss together, murmuring the name of Caleb throughout the entire day, less and less frequently, softer in volume, as the long, somber day went on, so that the little 4 seemed to fade away gradually from everyone's consciousness. Now, at this special naming, the community performed the brief murmur of replacement ceremony, repeating the name for the first time since the loss, softly and slowly at first, then faster, with greater volume as the couple stood on stage with the new child sleeping in the mother's arms. It was as if the first Caleb were returning. Another new child was given the name Roberto, and Jonas remembered that Roberto the Old had been released only last week. But there was no murmur of replacement ceremony for the new little Roberto. Release was not the same as loss. He sat politely through the ceremonies 2, 3, and 4, increasingly bored, as he was each year. Then a break for a midday meal, served outdoors, and back again to the seats for the 5s, 6s, 7s, and finally, last day of the ceremonies, the 8s. Jonas watched and cheered as Lily marched proudly to the stage, became an 8 and received the identifying jacket that she would need this year, the one with the smaller buttons and, for the first time, pockets, indicating that she was mature enough to now keep track of her own small belongings. She stood solemnly listening to the speech of the firm instructions of the responsibilities of 8 and doing the volunteer hours for the first time. But Jonas could see that Lily, though she seemed attentive, was looking longingly at the row of gleaming bicycles which would be presented tomorrow morning to Benigns. Next year, Lily Billy, Jonas thought. It was an exhausting day, and even Gabriel, retrieved in his basket from the nurturing center, slept soundly that night. Finally, it was the morning of the ceremony of 12.